You're listening to School Counseling Simplified, a podcast with easy-to-implement strategies for busy school counselors. Here's your host, Rachel Davis from Bright Futures Counseling.
So I've got a question for you. How would it feel to know that you're delivering top-quality lessons, small groups, and individual activities to your kiddos, but that you're not having to sacrifice your nights and weekends planning? That'd be pretty great, right? That's why I created Impact, my monthly membership program for school counselors, where I intentionally select resources designed to support you and your students. Each month, I give you monthly curriculum plans outlining which activities to do and how to do them, along with the activities themselves. So I'm talking Tier 1, 2, and 3 resources and data tracking tools. You'll also receive video implementation guides where I walk you through page by page of every resource so you feel confident to implement it with your kiddos. You can attend quarterly live training sessions where you can earn PD credit, get in the hot seat during one of our twice monthly Zoom calls to get feedback on your specific caseload needs, or just hang out in the members-only Facebook group and connect with other counselors who are just like you so you don't have to feel like you're on your own island anymore. And I'm always sprinkling in fun bonuses and challenges to keep it exciting. So if this sounds like the exact thing you need to take the guesswork out of planning and make the maximum impact at your school, head over to stressfreeschoolcounseling.com/impact to get started today. Okay, let's go to the show. Hey guys, thanks for listening to another episode of School Counseling Simplified podcast. So last week we were talking a lot about MTSS when it comes to planning for your program. And this week I want to talk to you about the ASCA National Model and how you can use that when you're planning for your school year. So if you take a look at the ASCA National Model, and I'll link to a graphic in the show notes, but you've probably seen it. It's like a diamond. It kind of looks like a checkerboard of 4 things. It's define, deliver, manage, and assess. So it seems abstract, kind of like I mentioned last week, how I first thought about RTI and MTSS as a grad school student. You hear these things and they just kind of seem like words. I don't know. It was hard for me to imagine them in action. So what I want to do for you today is I'm going to give you an example of how I would use a student referral and do the whole process through the lens of this ASCA National Model. Okay, so let's dive in. So for example, let's say we get a referral from a teacher that a student is struggling with self-regulation. Anytime that they're feeling upset or angry, instead of responding appropriately, they hide under the table or they throw a chair at someone or they scream and have a meltdown, okay? So she is referring the student and she says, hey, this kid is having a really hard time self-regulating. We need help. And you say, okay, I'm on it. So you've likely had some other referrals of similar things. So you're going to put the student into a group. So you're going to do a self-regulation small group. Now, before you plan out your group, you need to do the ASCA National Model steps. So step 1, define. You're going to define the student standards. So you don't just want to do like a random willy-nilly, let's just try a few things and see if they work or not. We want to have a clear plan here. Now, I like to think about it kind of like an IEP. Now, it's entirely different, but an IEP, as you know, if you've worked with any special ed students, they have goals, right? And they work toward these goals. So that's what I like to think about when I'm planning my counseling stuff, is think about an objective or a goal that you have for your student that you want them to meet and what you can do to help them get there. Now, what you can do to help them get there is you want to make sure that they're meeting these student standards. So ASCA has student standards, mindsets, and behaviors, and they've been recently updated in June 2021. So make sure you check out the new ones, and you want to make your objectives compatible with these standards. So like I said, I'm doing this example of self-regulation, so I'm going to break it down for you. So let's say that our objectives for this student in this group is that we want them to be able to learn coping skills that they can use when they're feeling in the yellow zone or in the red zone. We want to help them make goals for using these skills. So they could say something like, next time I feel out of control or angry, I'm going to take a deep breath instead of throw the chair, right? That would be a goal that they're working on. And then we want them to identify a support system. So we want to help the students identify through one of our group sessions people that they can go to for support at school. So those are the objectives that we want to cover during our group, but now we need to make sure that they're compatible with the student standards, mindset, and behaviors. So I just pull up the document and then I'm going to go through and match them. So for example, under the mindset standards, under the category of mindset, I've chosen these two. I'll read them. M1, belief in development of whole self, including a healthy balance of mental, social, emotional, and physical well-being. Great. That's exactly what we want our students to do, right? We want them to understand the need for why they're learning these things and the need for the social, emotional well-being. We want them to have that mindset. I also chose another mindset, M2, that says sense of acceptance, respect, support, and inclusion for self and others in the school environment. So right now, the way the student is acting out, because they don't know how to properly self-regulate, they're not being very respectful for themselves or others in the school environment. So that's a mindset we want to work on for them. So that pairs very nicely with our objectives. Then moving on to the behavior standards, these are categorized into learning strategies, self-management skills, and social skills. So under the learning strategies, I picked two. I picked critical thinking skills to make informed decisions and long and short-term academic, career, and social emotional goals. So what I mean by that is the critical thinking skills to make informed decisions. I want these students to learn how to identify the zone that they're in or how they're feeling, and then to make an informed decision, to critically think about it and make an informed decision by selecting the appropriate coping strategy that they need to use. And then in regards to the goal setting, as I mentioned before, I want the student to think about their own goals and how they want to respond when they're feeling a certain way, rather than just reacting. Now, under the self-management category, I chose responsibility for self and actions. That makes perfect sense, right? The category is literally self-management. We're teaching self-regulation. So I could have technically used all of these, but I picked 4. The first one, responsibility for self and actions. So that's a super important thing we want them to learn through our group, right? The second one, self-discipline and self-control. Hello, self-regulation small group. This is right on par. Effective coping skills is the third one. Again, this is so perfect. It aligns so well with our group. We want to teach our students effective coping skills. And then lastly, personal safety skills. So how they're reacting now when they're feeling out of control is that they are hurting others or themselves. So we want them to learn the self-management skill of personal safety. So like I said, that category just perfectly aligned with my group. And then lastly, social skills. I chose these two, not so much as what they'll learn during the group, but what they'll learn as being part of the group. And the first one is positive, respectful, and supportive relationships with other students. And the second one, positive relationships with adults that support success. So basically, by being a part of my group, they're going to learn how to interact respectfully with other students and with me. And they're going to identify those adults that can help them help support their success as they learn these self-regulation skills. So that where the self-management skills were directly what I'm going to be teaching them in the group, like coping skills, these social skills are skills that they're going to learn by just being part of this small group counseling experience. And I could pretty much pick those 2 social skills across the board, regardless of small group topic, because it's just by being a part of the small group, there's benefits. A little side note, I like to communicate that with teachers and parents sometimes, that yes, during the small group, you're going to be learning actual like meat and potatoes that you can implement, but just being part of that group itself and being part of that collaborative experience is super beneficial as well. So that's just something fun, like a little bonus tip you can mention if you're trying to get stakeholders on board with small group counseling. So what I did there, and again, this is an auditory platform, so I hope this has been clear, but I will link to the Mindsets and Behaviors student standards in the show notes so you can kind of follow along. But basically, I get a referral. We know we're going to do a self-regulation group. We pick some objectives that our group's going to focus on, and then we go through and we just highlight or circle, out of those mindsets and behaviors, which ones apply to our group. This way, we can show our principal, we can show our stakeholders, hey, I'm not randomly picking these things. I'm basing them on the ASCA National Model, on these student standards, and I'm going to collect data to see if they're effective or not. So this is really taking your counseling program to the next level, and it's really quite simple. You're going to read through them and circle the ones that match your area of need, right? That's all I did. This took not very long at all. I read through the standards and picked the ones that best matched my students' area of need. Okay, so that was step 1. It's the longest step. That's where we're defining the student standards, right? Now, step 2 is manage. This is where we're going to do the program planning. So now you have your objectives, you have your ASCA standards, you can easily create an outline that reflects the objectives and meets the standards. So your outline is going to be what you're doing with the kiddos. So we talked about this last month. We really focused on small groups. So we talked about how you'll pick like an icebreaker, you'll pick an activity, maybe you do a journal, maybe you show a video. That's what I mean by an outline. You're literally writing down, this is what I plan to do with the kids in each session. But now, based on step 1, you know it's not random. It's going to directly reflect these standards. Then it's time to deliver. So step 3 is deliver. Deliver the student services through a counseling group. You're simply going to meet with the kids once a week for about 30 minutes, 6 to 8 weeks, and carry out this outline. You're going to deliver the services. And then step 4, assess. So you're going to assess your program, right? You're going to assess how that small group did, and you're going to do that by tracking data. You know my 2 favorite data tracking tools are the self-assessment and behavior progress monitoring forms. We'll link to those in the show notes, but those are what I like to use to track data in small groups. It's super simple. We can see how the students feel that they're doing themselves, and we can get parent-teacher feedback on how they're acting out the coping skills and how they're applying what they're learning in group. So that may have sounded like very formal and very strategic, but it gets easier. It's going to become second nature to you. Once you're, sitting down, you're like, oh, I'm going to do a group on this. I got referrals on this. I'm going to write some objectives, go through that list, choose some standards to match it, throw a couple outlines together, and let's implement this baby. It's going to become second nature, I promise. It sounds kind of crazy, but it totally gets easier. And then once you start doing it over and over, this is your, order of events, your process that you're following each time. Your program is going to be so awesome because it's going to be so ASCA aligned and so organized and so effective, which is the point, right? Now, that's just one. I just showed you that example of how to do a self-regulation small group. You're probably going to be doing multiple groups. You're going to be doing class lessons. You're going to be doing individual sessions. And you want to make sure that all of these things are ASCA aligned and meeting those standards because you want to create a program that supports this national model. So it can seem overwhelming. It will get easier, but if you're feeling overwhelmed and you want to hit the easy button, I do have that big bundle that is my elementary counseling program where I give you the curriculum map. It's that freebie I've been sending out. You get that, but then you also get everything that's mentioned in that curriculum map for you, and all of it's ASCA aligned. So all my small groups, I've got the standards right there for you. So it's super easy to follow. So we'll link to that in the show notes. If you just want to hit the easy button and get everything you need in one spot, you're going to love that. If you want the curriculum map to check it out, the sample one, it's a freebie. We'll link to that in the show notes as well. And of course, I'll link to the image of the ASCA National Model and those mindsets and behaviors so you can cross-reference them yourself as you're doing your own planning. Okay, guys, I hope you found that helpful, and I hope you're having wonderful starts to your school year. Reach out to me on Instagram at Bright Futures Counseling. I would love to connect with you. I want to know what you're up to, how the school year's going so far, and let me know if I can support you in any way. Okay, talk next week.
Thanks for listening to School Counseling Simplified. You can find the links from today's episode in the show notes. If you'd like to connect with Rachel, she's on Instagram and Teachers Pay Teachers at Bright Futures Counseling. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any episodes of School Counseling Simplified. Talk to you next week.